Yeah, I don't remember. We were chatting about something, and I said we had more we could talk about last time, but I can't remember what it was we were going to talk about. Brain fart. All the information's gone. Talking about names. Pseudonyms. Creative projects. Oh, I can't even remember. I can't even remember where we were last time. Let me pull out my notebook, see if my notebook has anything useful to offer. Well, that's the different section. So last time we were not talking about realms of chaos and how to write playable adventures in them. That was not what we were talking about last time. We were talking about various art styles and pseudonyms for working in them. The creation of pseudonyms. What did we do? We came up with Van G. Parrish for Vanguard Parish. And making artwork out of perishable goods. So Van G. Parrish was, I mean, there are some artworks I could do. That one of them was the butter artwork for that. But some of the other things that I like, would they count as perishable? Like, one of the things I've been thinking about doing is doing a I had to move my camera at some point, so I must have gotten that out of line. One of the things I thought about doing for making some artwork was to take some eggshells and do some things with those. Now, one of the things about working with eggshells is you can take them as they are, and if you grind them really small, you have essentially like a chalk that you can use. Now, you could probably use a binder to stick them together, but that format you could do sand art with and stuff like that. But there's another way you can work with eggshell, and that is to bake it at high temperature, and it converts into it essentially converts into a mortar. It turns into quicklime. No, it turns into lime. You can turn it into quicklime by processing it just a little bit further. And then when you lay it out, it'll harden into a hard surface. So you can turn eggshells into quicklime, but you don't have to convert it. Like that, I think, is one of those ones that takes a high temperature processing to get to a certain level. So like you could do eggshells as an perishable material, but turning it into mortar, a lime mortar, it's not really perishable anymore. So, like, would that fall under the category of the Van G. Parrish artworks? I don't know. That's one of the things is that, like, I have a lot of ideas of different formats of art I could make. And if I tried to separate them into categories to delineate which ones I think would be a better choice for a given artist, I'm liable to come across a lot of edge case uses where it could be multiple different personalities that I use to do it. So it's not as clear cut as I would like it to be in some of those cases. But I do feel like some of the stuff that I've played around with creating art for, they're distinct enough that I want them to be separate identities. Now, some of these, like the microscopic art, like I think the last time as we were goofing around with it, I ended up naming that like a Slim Triflings was the creator name. I think Slim Triflings might be better named as the designation of the art series. So if you did a series of paintings on grains of rice, or maybe perhaps better fitting that genre on strands of spaghetti, like dried spaghetti or stuff like that, or I feel like there's got to be something equivalent, like would you do something along the lines of the bristles of a broom? I don't know. Like there's got to be. That was one of the other things I was doing. I was looking up small things that you could paint on, and like they're like the seeds that you can get out of any like spice cabinet, or like an apple seed. An apple seed would be not too different from a grain of rice, though. I feel like there's got to be something that's so obvious that I'm missing. Things as small as a grain of rice. Yeah. I don't know if I sound congested to you, but I was fine literally 5 minutes ago. But before I hopped on here, I ate something, and it was literally just lunch meat. And so I'm starting to wonder if I'm allergic to meat, which would be horrible. No. So, no, like as soon as you put the term grain of rice in there, that's all they're going to show you is grains of rice. Things that are small. I mean, I guess you could do pebbles or grains of sand. It's not really where I'm going with it. No, I mean, like the carving of like pencil lead is one thing you can do that on that small scale, but what is something that's a decent example of a tiny thing? Like there's the head of a pin, there's grains of rice, there's grains of sand. Oh, for God's sake, are you kidding me? Type in the word tiny and you get some stupid rap star or something like that. Stupid. That's just so stupid. Like that should not be the first result that results from a search like that. What else is tiny like that? Like there's a part of me that feels like a fingernail could be tiny, but mine aren't particularly tiny fingernails. Um, beads. It's got to be something like seeds, beads, fingernails, animal teeth, rice. It would be interesting to see if I could find like a what kind of sizes we get on like quartz crystals or stuff like that. I mean, we could do beach pebbles, but that's nowhere near as tiny as I was anticipating playing around with. Like, part of the appeal of this idea is getting something so small that it seems impressive when you can do something with it. Electronic components. Beach pebbles. Oh, that's interesting. No, no. Okay, that's not what we were going for. Back up. Let's go back up. There goes my digestive system getting angry again. What else we got that's super tiny? We have these very small objects. Yeah, that's what we're trying to find out. That's not what. No, don't open a. Don't open a random YouTube video that I was not looking for. Thank you very much. Very small objects. Introduction, instructions, classifications, the collection database. Can we get a, like, I mean, some of them are like resistors and capacitors from electronics. I mean, I guess there's like pills and medications, and I think we talked last time about some of this stuff, and you mentioned potentially using like those food capsules, like the gelatin capsules that you would keep herbs and stuff like that in, and that's doable. I mean, you sort of like you could do something similar with a Tic Tac, but even those are a little bit larger than a grain of rice usually runs. I'm trying to think what else you could paint on that would be interesting and like clearly different. BB, yeah, you can do BBs. Like I think we talked about doing like the planets on beads and whatnot. Yeah, no, like things that are 5 millimeters or smaller. What grain of rice? Size. Okay, so about 5 millimeters in length. So things that are 5 millimeters or smaller. A lot of beads come up. I mean, I suppose you could take a hole punch and punch a hole in some paper and just do something on that, but that feels like cheating. I mean, watch gears? Buttons? I mean, it feels like there's got to be something that's like something obvious that we're missing, and when we figure it out, we'll just go like, oh, of course, that's the perfect thing. Of course, that's what we should have been talking about this whole time. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out. But it feels like it's just being obstinately difficult to figure out. I mean, you could always paint on an LED, but what I'm hoping for is something you can encounter in nature. In sufficient quantities that they're ubiquitous. They're everywhere. But when you figure it out, when you find them, and you realize there's this resource to make stuff out of, that's when you're really like, this is the treasure. This is the thing that we're going to play with. Like, what is that thing? You know that feeling, like it's right there on the edge of your tongue, or the tip of your tongue, or the edge of your brain, but you don't know what it is until you figure it out. Things that are 5 millimeters in size. Things that are 5 millimeters. Chain links, no, that's for very specific kinds of creations. Okay, what might be interesting to go into a like a hardware store and just see what kind of tiny machine pieces you can get. There's got to be something. I mean, electronic components are not a completely invalid thing. Like taking little capacitors and painting them to look like other things. I could see doing that. Some jewelry findings, but again, those are like, you buy those from the store for, like, they're not a thing that you naturally encounter. They're made to be used for something. Whereas what I'm thinking of is like, there's something out there that you see on a regular basis. Like maybe it's like a ladybug carapace, or I don't know, like what, like insect shells, seeds from like apples. Um, I don't know. There's got to be something we're missing. I mean, we could the LED thing, like burnt out LEDs is one thing you could potentially do. If you did ones that are still good, could you figure out how to do it with translucent paints so that the light shines through them? I don't know. Like, I feel like that's starting to get into the category of trying to be very gimmicky. Not that the whole concept of painting on tiny things isn't a gimmick, but you're sort of layering gimmicks at that point, I feel like. Like fingernails, like, would be cool if they were smaller. I don't know. Like, there, if you were to do something along the lines of a painting on a LED, you could just as easily go to some of those like little crystals used for rhinestones and paint on those. .5mm as a search term brings up a lot of ammunition. That's not really what we're looking for. So 5mm objects still gets us a lot of no. Those perler beads might be, but so roughly the tip of a pencil is 1mm. An eraser is 5mm. Tip of a crayon is usually 2mm roughly. One pea is a centimeter roughly. A peanut is 2 centimeters. That's some sort of quasi-useful data. What else we got? Size in millimeters of length. That's, it doesn't matter how long a pencil is. I can always make it shorter. Toothpicks are about 1.5mm wide. Is that what we're looking at? Roughly. Ooh, is a penny really a millimeter wide? Like a penny would be a millimeter thick? That could be very interesting to try to do something. So a piece of popcorn unpopped would be about 4mm. Does that sound right? A thumbtack head would be 5 millimeters. So the thickness of a penny is about 1 millimeter. Dress shirt buttons. Dice tend to be, mini dice, no. A regular size die is 10 centimeters. Or 10 millimeters, not centimeters. Durr! So 1 millimeter thickness on a penny sounds like something worth playing with. I can kind of almost imagine doing something on the edge of a penny all the way around. I don't know what I'd put on the edge of a penny. But there's a part of me that thinks, like, if you did something on the edge of a penny, like, how do you, like, a penny may only be a centimeter, a millimeter thick, but the circumference of it is substantial enough that you're wearing it as a coin, as a piece of jewelry at that point. How do you protect the edges? Like a toothpick can be about 1.5. So a spaghetti noodle tends to be about 2 millimeters wide. A match head tends to be 2.5. It could be kind of fun to do light a match, let it burn out or blow it out, let it cool enough, and then use the match head that's been burnt. You'd probably have to soak it in something to let it, like a PVA glue or something like that, to let it not be so brittle and soft and fragile. What else could we do? Anything else that's similar to that to play with? Coriander seed, mustard seed. I mean, we're back into playing with seeds. See more options. What do we got? Earring studs, no. Again, that sort of falls into the category of, so a penny would be 19 millimeters wide, but 1 millimeter thick. Okay, so some of the gems and findings for jewelry are the things that come up the most often, because I guess nobody ever really worries about anything being smaller than like an inch or a centimeter when it's not something like a piece of hardware or a piece of jewelry. Let's try 1 millimeter object. That doesn't answer anything. That's 1 meter. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Because you did it wrong, Ken. Because you entered the information wrong. Nanometers up to millimeters. Frog egg. Human egg. Plant cell. That's not what I'm looking for. I kind of want like permanently existing things that won't biodegrade, hopefully. Mm, mm, mm. Oh, come on. There's got to be something. I got to be missing something. Like I said, we'll probably at some point realize what it is we're forgetting to think about, and it'll hit us, and we'll be like, of course. But as it stands, a grain of rice may be one of the best things you can use as a frame of reference for painting on small things. Or the head of a pin. No, I wasn't asking about the head of a tapeworm. That's a weird thing to... Okay, so apparently some people have engraved some things on the heads of pins. That's kind of interesting. The eye of a needle. Honestly, I just don't know. Like, what would be a really good example of something? Like, culturally, we think of things on the terms of, like, we're just used to thinking of the head of a pin, the eye of a needle, the grain of rice. What's... grains of salt? But, you know, the trick with doing something on a grain of salt is, again, it's one of those things that's... it's not fragile, but it's environmentally vulnerable. I mean, matchsticks. Like, hypodermic needles would be small, but I don't know that that's what we want to be using as our frame of reference for. Things that are small. Why is that not getting me a usable result? That's so weird. Like, why can't I get a functional result out of such a simple search term? I mean, I may end up just playing around with electronic components, because you can pull a lot of those out of junk electronics. So Pinterest, a list of small things, tiny things, things of unusual size. Postage stamps. No, like dollhouse stuff. That's not useful. Okay, that's... okay. And this is probably going to be 100 days of tiny things. Well, no, that's less useful too. Most of them are going to be flower blossoms, it looks like. Okay, nope. 10 super tiny awesome things you should appreciate more. What do we got? Oh, Metaphorically tiny. That's not... That it didn't rain today. That's not a thing I can paint on. That's not useful to me. Come on. I mean, I might end up just seeing about insect skeletons and pinheads and electronic components, maybe, but I feel like there's got to be something. Something somewhere in the world that, like, it's so common that we just take it for granted that it's not a real thing to think about. Like, I don't know. What would it be? Like, I'm trying to think, like, look around me in my environment. What do I have around me that's tiny that I could refer to? Like, maybe the scales off of a pine cone, but they're not super tiny. Scales of a fish. That might be interesting to try. How big are the scales on fish? Scales on a fish. Size of scales on fish. Those look a little funky. This might be a little hard to do any painting on, but honestly, I'm also wondering if, like, there have been times where I've looked up stuff in the past, like grains of sand, and somebody does a microscope view of grains of sand, and they're like little seashells in it. And if I could get a tiny little seashell set like that and paint on those at the microscopic scale, that would be fun. Like, fish scales might be viable. And I mean, get a piece of fish from the grocery store and with the skin on, and there's probably one or two scales still on it. I don't know. And then it's a question of, am I still able to touch them without becoming allergically symptomatic touching them? I seem to be allergic to frickin' everything lately. But grains of sand in microscope. Images. So grains of sand, some of them are like rounded pieces of glass. I could see maybe playing with some of those. But that's the trick to that, is that they have a tendency to vary in size. Whereas, like, finding something that, like, is consistently a given size is the real trick. And I feel like, I should just dabble with grains of rice to start with, heads of pins, but I do think I could possibly move into the realm of playing around with painting on small waste electronic pieces. That kind of fits my mode of recycling garbage for projects. You know, something that's otherwise trash I can turn into artwork. That might be just where I end up going. Microscale electronics reworked into something. Ooh, we're at 40 minutes. I don't know what we're talking about next time, but I guess next time is Thursday night, so I guess we'll figure it out there. Yeah, I could do BBs. I could do beads. Pins, needles. I feel like if it were to be like a needle, I would almost want to do something distinctly unique about it. Like a stained glass window in the eye of a needle. Like, to me, that would be the way to go. That would be an interesting thing to try to achieve. What would be the thin material I would use as the glass panes? Like, I can imagine using like a jig that I set up to make a flat surface that I can then take the pieces and put them in place, and then use like a oil paint as like a glue, a binder between pieces, like the came between the glass panes. But what would you use for the glass panes? Is there a way I could? That would be tricky. I was gonna say, is there a way I could paint onto a surface and then let it set up, and then pick it off the surface and make panes out of those? I don't imagine that's something I could do. I would have to really do some research into materials. Like, what is that small, that thin material? I don't know. But I do like the idea of doing stained glass in the center of the eye of a needle. I mean, I may just have to find a flat, clear material that fills the eye of a needle and then paint the translucent colors onto it. I don't know. That's something to think about. How to do stained glass in the eye of a needle. That would be unique. That would certainly be a distinctive and unique creation. How would you do it? Like graphene? Like sheets of graphite? Like, if you do it right, are they thin enough that light can pass through them? Man, if I could get little pieces of graphite or something like that, like 1 or 2 molecules thick, that would be perfect for doing tiny stained glass. How would I shape them? Or would I even bother? Like, would you glue them together? Like, shape the pieces and glue them together at that scale? Or would you make a single sheet of the translucent material and then just paint on the surface of it? Now I'm curious. I'm curious if there are ways that I can figure out how to do sheets of graphene that I can pull out separately, and how thin I can get them to be. I bet you, honestly, if I used like that, there's that technique, you can take a piece of like graphite, like brake pad, put a piece of adhesive tape on it, just a little flake of it, and then You fold the tape over and over and over again in multiple directions, and it peels the layers of graphite off of each other. So you get these really thin sheets of graphene. If you then put that tape into a liquid that would dissolve the adhesive and let the sheets of graphene free float, then pour the graphene out and try to manipulate the pieces within the liquid. I mean, maybe. It's maybe something to play with. Oh, I could almost see, now I'm really thinking about it. I could almost see doing a grain of sand as stones and making a stone wall with a stained glass window set in it, in the eye of a needle. That would be amazing. Like, I'd probably have to work my way towards that size just to see if it's possible, but that's not a bad idea. All right, something to think about. I'm sure it wasn't the most entertaining content for me to play around with that in my head, but it's 45 minutes of me brainstorming and probably a lot of quiet time as I'm trying to read or look up things. But sorry if it wasn't the greatest thing. I will catch you on Thursday night. And I'm hoping that I read a book recently that I want to try to do the quick review of. I want to try out that micro review format that I was talking about. See if that works a little bit better for some of that. I'm not sure. I think we can probably spend Thursday talking about how I potentially do some of the creative prompts based off of things like that as short videos too. I don't know. I'll think about it. We'll see how it goes. I will catch you. What's today's Tuesday, right? So I catch you on Thursday. Thanks for joining. Take care and have a good night. I don't know. Does that work better? Thanks, take care, and good night. Yeah, that works. Stained glass windows in the eye of a needle. Man, that would be something.